Hey, what's up everybody? Steve with the Penguin Outdoors YouTube channel, and in today's video I'm going to do a walkthrough of how I have rigged out my Bonafide PWR129. I'm going to do kind of two parts. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take you from the very front of the kayak all the way through the back and show you how everything is rigged and how I use it when I'm out on the water. And then the second part of the video, I will show you how I transport this kayak in a way that leaves me with very minimal things to do when I get to the ramp before I get on the water. The transport version of this kayak is not all that different than what you see now for being water ready. So we're going to dive right on into it. And hey, if you like today's video, if you find this information helpful, entertaining, anything like that, please, please, please hit that subscribe button. I appreciate it more than you could possibly imagine. Definitely leave me a comment down below, good or bad. I love engaging with the audience, so I'll definitely try to respond to any comments that you leave, any questions you might have, or anything like that. So without further ado, let's jump right in. All right, we're going to try and use this tripod. I don't even know what I said the first time. We're going to try and use the tripod kind of like a selfie stick and walk on through this thing. So this is the Bonafide PWR129. If you live under a rock and haven't already heard, this is the greatest new kayak to show up in like a long time. I always get excited when I get new kayaks. It's just in my nature. Guys, I've been kayak fishing for what's about to be 31 years. I keep saying 30 years, but it's really about to be 31. I have never been so excited about a kayak ever. Like this kayak, this thing is money, okay? So some of what I show you will be Bonafide things. Like when we get to like the catchboard, actually I should grab the catchboard out of the car. But like when we get to the catchboard, for example, how I store my catchboard is part of how the kayak is rigged, but it's from Bonafide. It's something that came with the kayak because Bonafide, to be honest, did a very good job of designing this kayak in a way that is as functional as it can possibly be and leaves you with a minimal amount of rigging. And then there will be things that I did, that I came up with, and we'll go through them all. So let me get this catchboard in place here. Move that out of the way. There we go. All right, so let's start up front with the motor. This is a Motor Guide XI3. It's the same motor that I had on my Pro Angler 14, but I've changed things a little bit. So the first thing that I will talk about is the mounting plate. This one is made by Bonafide. There are other options out there, like the mount from One Objective. The big difference that I see, the One Objective mount also utilizes these two holes where the paddle strap used to go across there. I wanted the Bonafide one just because I wanted to go with the one that Bonafide made for this kayak. So it has a couple of mounting locations under there. It also comes down behind the front handle and bolts through there. Very, very solid mount. Very happy with it. Very easy to install. On top of the mount is the XI3 quick release bracket. For deploying the motor, I went with the Bonafide kit, which, move that out of the way, gives you this little through hull here. Comes with the clip and the lines and everything you need. Comes right back here to this. So all I do is pull this handle, the pedal drops down, and I can slide the XI3 off. Now, if you've ever deployed a trolling motor on a kayak, you've probably reached up, shoved against the motor, used your foot, used the paddle, whatever, to get it to slide off of there. And then sometimes they wouldn't really lock, and you'd have to finagle it to get it to lock. That's where this little trick that I got from Gene Jensen comes into play. This bungee cord here, I just tied a knot in each end of this bungee cord. It's about 15 inches in length, and I zip tied it on each end. And what that does is when you hit the pedal, the motor actually slides itself off. Now, this stretches over time, and you'll have to fine tune it. So right now, it actually doesn't slide itself off, I don't think. See how it didn't move? But all you got to do is tighten it up a little bit, and it'll slide itself off. I just need to adjust it. The other thing, two things that it does, is because it assists the motor in going down, it locks it into place when it gets down. Now, even though mine doesn't self-deploy at the moment because I have to adjust it, this tension still, when it drops down, locks it into place. It only takes a little bit of tension on there to accomplish that. It also keeps your cords from getting stuck in this little groove here. Sometimes without the bungee cord, these cords would get jammed in there and prevent you from pulling the motor up properly. So the bungee cord helps alleviate that. Speaking of pulling the motor up, for retrieving it, again, I went with the Bonafide kit. This little rope goes around the motor here, comes down here. It's got a little handle on it at the end. And what you do is once the motor is deployed and there's tension tight on this line, you lock it into the yak attack cleat. And it holds the line tight like that. The idea being that the tension on the line prevents this rope from ever getting tangled up in here. And then when you're ready to pull up, it pulls it up nice and smooth, turns the motor the way it's supposed to. It works for me personally about 50% of the time. It worked 100% of the time when I first installed it, but this rope stretches every dang old time you use it. You can see, here's the original knot in the end. I've retied it 3 or 4 times. Here's where we're at now. And every time I've been out the last couple of times, that rope gets tangled and bound up in here, and pulling this motor up is a whole problem. I'm not a huge fan of having a line constantly tight across here. I've learned to deal with it, but I can tell you, my hand to God, I will not stay with this much longer. I'll probably get one of a lot of guys like Gene Jensen, Fluke Master. They use leftover mounts from Echo Garmin map units, and they clamp them on here, and then they put a eye bolt right in line with this bolt, and that's what they tie off to. And then the rope just hangs down here in the cockpit. And sometimes it'll get tangled up, but you just kind of keep an eye on it. That's what I did with the Pro Angler, and I got used to it, and it worked fine. I feel like I'm having more problems with this line than I ever did with one that I just left hanging down in the cockpit and grabbed it when I needed it. So that part's going to change. I'm just tired of fighting with it. If it works for other people, that's great. It's not working for me in a way that I'm happy with. So moving on from the motor, let's move on to the hatch. So on top of the hatch, or I'm sorry, can't move on from the motor yet. Here's how I connect the power. These access plates are absolutely phenomenal. Bonafide included these so that you don't have to drill holes in your kayak. And if you mess one of these up, you can just buy another plate. So super genius. I've got flush mount Anderson plug there. Has a nice cover that I can snap down for traveling if I decide to. And the motor just plugs right into there. Nice and easy. So my power retrieval, it's all on this access plate right here. Nice and clean. On top of the hatch, we have, you know what, let's skip the hatch for just 2 seconds. Since I talked about this power connection, let's go back to the battery and show you where the battery is and how the trolling motor connects to it. That way we're all copacetic. So the battery is right behind the seat. Flip the seat up real quick. So right behind the seat, underneath the seat is another access plate. I have the same kind of flush mount Anderson plug here. Just goes right up to the battery. I leave my battery in the kayak at all times. It never comes out, ever. So what I have is a quick connector for my battery charger that goes up under the cover. This is a Minn Kota battery box, by the way. And we'll talk more about this battery box when I get back to this part of the kayak. But I have a quick charge or a quick connector for the charger connected. The Anderson plugs stay connected here. The battery box is attached here with the strap that holds the cover on. And then I've got a bungee with an anchor on either side. It's nice and tight over top and the black pack against it. We'll talk more about that battery box in a couple of minutes. Let's go back up front. All right, so on top of the hatch, I know we've started that a couple of times now, is where the catchboard is. Now this catchboard holder is factory from Bonafide. Hang on, sorry. I was trying to release the motor one-handed and it wasn't having it. So this is the solution that Bonafide included with the kayak for holding your catchboard. I really like it. It's super convenient. The only thing that I haven't really quite figured out yet is how to attach my tether in a way that the catchboard's tethered while I'm using it, but not in my way up here. The only thing I've really come up with is to attach, because the leash uses a Velcro strap. I think if I just put the Velcro strap around the seat here and leave it untethered when it's up here, and then let the fish chill in the net, bring the catchboard out, connect it, then use it, take my photos, release the fish, and then unconnect the catchboard and put it back up here. That way it's tethered when I'm actually using it, because it's very secure up here. It doesn't need to be tethered while it's up here. The bow winkle here on top of the hatch has these grooves built in for the catchboard. So it just slides into its grooves and goes under that little bungee. And it's out of the way and very secure and very easy to grab. I'm very, very happy with the way the catchboard sits on top of the hatch. It also doesn't interfere with opening the hatch, which is good because that's where we're going next. That cord does though. All right, inside the hatch. This is some of the stuff I'm most proud of with this particular build. So I've got my manual bilge pump. If you kayak, you need a manual bilge pump. Don't leave home without it. Not having this cheap accessory in your kayak is stupid. Okay? You can flip. I don't care what kind of kayak you have. That bilge pump got used for the first time ever last summer to get a lot of water out of my Hobie PWR129 because I flipped it. I did it. There's a video on my channel. You can see it. Actually, I think I did a few videos about it. That bilge pump saved my ass, especially because I was fishing solo, which I do a lot. And I would never have made it back to the ramp if I couldn't manually bilge out all that water in my kayak. I never saw that problem coming, but I did prepare for it, and you should too. So the bilge pump is attached to the kayak with just a couple of zip ties here. This one here, this one here. And I just drilled a little hole just big enough for the zip tie. And so those two zip ties hold it in. That zip tie holds the hose to it. It's good to go. Now, it's not in here right now because I got a little bit of water from being out in some insane rain the other day. And so I had to take some stuff out because I got to get the water out. But right up under the nose here, I keep a dry bag that has tools in it. It's got an emergency radio, some glow sticks, just basic stuff, and my rain gear. And I keep that tucked up under the nose. For all of the power except for the trolling motor, I am using the FPV system. I have this FPV wireless hub and this FPV 12 volt 17.5 amp hour battery. I used this exact setup in the Pro Angler and I was absolutely thrilled with it. This plate here is a cheap cutting board from Walmart. They're white when you get them. I cut it to fit, and then I screwed it in with 3 screws up at the top here, and then I put one bracket down the bottom here. It's a little L bracket. I screwed it into the cutting board, and then I just siliconed it to the deck so that it's very secure, but I can remove it if I need to. It's nothing permanently attached to the hull of my kayak. And then I just have my graph. I have it all labeled. So I put labels up here under the hatch. So like number 1 is my graph. It always has power. A is my light pole in the back. B is my bow lights. I can turn them on with the remote. Show you that. Here's the remote. I don't know how well you'll be able to see this in the daylight, but here's my light pole. Oh yeah, there she goes. She lit up for us. So that's A, turns the light pole on and off. And then up here we got the bow lights, and they turn on and off with B. I don't have anything on C and D yet. Haven't found a need for it, but if I ever forget which wires are which, I got them right there. Back in there for a minute. We'll get to that in a second. So that runs everything but the trolling motor. I bought a, I want to say it's a 15-foot FPV extension cable when I had the Pro Angler, because the battery itself was located all the way in the rear of the kayak. It's super convenient in this kayak because I disconnect it and pull it out here, and then it can go up to the charger that's above the kayak in the garage. And then I just put it back in and reconnect it. I've got a bunch of the excess tucked away underneath the plate and zip tied. It's just very clean. And then when I'm out on the water, I have another dry bag with my Reaper hoodie in case I need it that sits in here, and my cooler sits in here. And I have no problems with weight up front, like not even remotely close. I could put a lot more stuff in this hatch if I wanted to. The hatch is pretty cool because Bonafide designed it to open from either direction. Move that out of the way there. So you can pop these hinges up at the front here and open the hatch this way. It'll open all the way up, but since I have the catchboard and stuff on there, it's not going to right now. But it's a nice option to be able to open your hatch 2 different ways. Get that closed there. All right, let's pull this motor back up right quick. There we go. All right, moving back to my graph. Okay, so here is my Hook 7 reveal. I really like this graph. I'm sure I'll upgrade at some point. I'd like to have like maybe a Humminbird 360, but I really like this graph. So the power goes to the FPV system inside the hatch. So I have a Yak Attack through hull right here with just this single power cord coming out, going into the GPS, or the graph rather. The transducer is mounted to the bottom of this tripod. If you've ever seen Bonafide videos, pretty much everybody mounts their transducer to the bottom there. So the transducer is flush mounted to the bottom. And then, pull this stuff out here. Guys, how cool is this? This little metal container, it's a chapstick container that Kelly got me. Your chapstick will not melt, even in the hot summer, if it's in this case. It's super cool. So I can have my chapstick on the water without it getting all melted and gross. So this is a false bottom. All this ugly little thing is from an old tote that I had. The tote broke. So I just cut this out to closely match the bottom of the tripod, put some Velcro on it, and spray painted the top black. That false bottom is covering up my transducer wires. So just coiled up in here with a zip tie, nice and clean. Put this back in here. Oopsie. Helps if you go this way first. And then we'll pull that around there. Okay. So that just creates a nice little false bottom there. I toss stuff in there on top of it. Man, doing this stuff one-handed. All right. So, lost my train of thought for a minute there. So foot steering, Bonafide included foot steering, super nice. So my paddle is typically on the other side of the kayak, but for the purposes of this video, since I was doing most of my filming on this side, I just went ahead and put it on this side of the kayak, and typically that's on the other side. One of the things I've struggled with this kayak big time is my net, because my rod holders are normally full, and on the Pro Angler I used to just set the net right across the front hatch, but now if I set it across the front hatch, my catch board doesn't really interfere with it, but it gets caught on this bow winkle, and I like having the bow winkle because I can just lay if I'm going back and forth between like two different rods, I can just lay one of them across there. So the net laying across the hatch doesn't really work for me on this kayak, and I've had a really hard time getting used to it. So I got a double header, and I had the double header up here, and I had my net in it this past Friday practicing for a tournament. And I like to use these little straps when I'm underway, because the net would like be in the water or touch the water, and so I didn't want to lose it. So whenever I was moving, I had to have it clipped, and when I wasn't moving, I had to have it unclipped. And then I forgot to reclip it. I was underway, it popped out. It floats, but I didn't notice for what I assumed was probably a long time, because once it had come out, Trey and I could not find it anywhere. So somebody got a free net. But so what I did was I moved it up here, which is slightly higher on the boat. And at the moment, my backup net is a much shorter net. It's an Ego net. So I'm just going to put it in here for the next trip, see how I like that. But I think what's going to happen is I'm going to have to use this rod holder for my net, and then take one of the rods that I use frequently, like a chatterbait rod, and there's a hole for the tip up there on both sides of the kayak, and you can put your fishing rod here. So I think I may have to run with one fishing rod in there. I don't really like to feel cluttered, but I don't know. The whole net situation, we got to work that out. But if I don't end up staying with the double header for the net, I may use it as an alternate place for my catch board. So we'll see what happens with that. All right, so the battery box. This is a Minn Kota battery box. It's really great. I like it. The circuit breakers are built in. There's a circuit breaker for the motor and a circuit breaker for the two cigarette lighter holes, which is convenient if you want to run a GoPro or something off of it. But I had a lot of problems out on the water the other day with not being able to keep power to the trolling motor. And what it ended up being was, up inside of this cover on the back side of the positive terminal, it had come completely loose. So, and it was making like just enough contact to sometimes work. So if you get one of these boxes, I think they're about $60. There's a little screw here and a little screw here that gives you access to underneath of the cover that's on the inside of this lid. I would take a second and pop yours open, make sure everything's tight, add some thread locker. Now, I will say I have over 1,000 hours of use on this battery box. This is the second kayak that it's been in. So it went a long time without needing me to mess with it. But a little bit of thread locker and stuff is probably not the worst idea in the world. Like I said before, it's attached with a bungee and with this strap to the kayak. It never comes out. I leave it right here. Black pack, never comes out. It's attached. Bonafide included the clips for the black attack for the black pack right on the bungee as it comes off the factory floor. As this thing ships, you can literally set your black pack in it and clip it. They're super secure. They're not going anywhere. I think this is empty at the moment. Yeah, I had to strip like everything out of this kayak. The black pack kept everything dry, but everything else was soaking wet, and I just had gear everywhere, so it's empty. But what I keep in here is I have a selfie stick, a backup battery to charge GoPro stuff, and then everything else is like Plano boxes and edge boxes. It just has all my tackle, like jigs, chatterbaits, top water, stuff like that is in here. A big bag with a bunch of spare plastics is in here. And then the bag, I have a little KVD bag uh, that has my go-to constant use plastics in it, and that chills under the seat. Again, black pack never comes out. For the rear light here, this is a whip light, super bright. You're not going to find anybody on the water that's got a flagpole brighter than mine. I can tell you that right now. I was shining bright at the kayak launch the other morning. I've got another through hull wire here, and that runs up to the FPV system up in the bow. This wire has a quick disconnect, and so does the flagpole. It just pull that up, comes right off. Again, one-handed. There we go, locked back on. I've got my camera pole here. This one's too short. If you want to be a YouTuber and you're going to get a pole, get the Ram Tough one that's like 48 inches. That's what I really need to get. But this one's working for now. So the other thing to really talk about is my vinyl wrap. It's not a total wrap, obviously. I did all of this myself, and I'm going to do a separate video about the wrap, how I designed it, how I made it, and how you can do it yourself at home. It's not that hard. Just takes a little bit of time, but trust me, totally worth it. I mean, look how great that looks. And then in the back here, wouldn't be a complete video if I didn't mention my sponsors, FX Custom Rods and Solar Bat. I am not sponsored by OMTC, but let's talk about them for a minute because they've earned it. So real quick, before I get into how I transport the kayak, I want to take a second and talk about OMTC and why they have such a big sticker on my boat, and it's right there with the sponsors. And I'm not sponsored by OMTC, Ozark Mountain Trading Company, but they deserve that placement on the kayak. So very long story condensed very short. I had a huge problem. The hull on my Hobie Pro Angler cracked. I had a lot of issues getting my warranty fulfilled. I'm not even going to go into that, but a dealer down in Lake of the Ozarks made my life an absolute living nightmare. When I did, it took a month for me to get any kind of progress with that dealer. They were just a real pain. And by the time my replacement for the Hobie was coming, I didn't even want it anymore. They made me hate my own kayak with just awful customer service. The fact that the thing cracked in the first place, it was just, I was miserable and I wanted out of my Pro Angler. And OMTC reached out. They knew I was having problems. Several of the people affiliated with OMTC reached out, and not to ask me about the story, not to ask me what the other company was doing wrong. All they said was, hey, we know you're having this problem. How can we help? And that sparked conversation with OMTC that led to me actually trading my Pro Angler in and walking away with two new kayaks. One of them is the PWR129, and they are like the friendliest people I've ever dealt with. They just OMTC. I'm not going to ramble on. If you need a kayak, if you need a kayak accessory, if you have questions about kayaks, reach out to Ozark Mountain Trading Company. I promise you, they will take care of you. I'm not sponsored. They didn't ask for a plug. They get a plug and they get a prime spot on this boat because they earned it. I will promote OMTC for free every day of my life until I'm blue in the face. They're a great company. Check out Ozark Mountain Trading Company. And now, let's move on to how I transport this kayak. That's it. That's how it travels down the road, guys. Well, the retrieval rope for the motor isn't just hanging over the side. So, oh, I actually unclipped this bungee just to show you what was under the seat. I leave this bungee clipped all the time. Uh, it helps hold the seat rest back. But so this is how it travels down the road. If I'm making a long drive, like a couple hours or something, I'll usually also take the graph off, not the whole mount, but just like the graph itself. But this is how it travels. The black pack stays in all the time, battery box all the time, seat all the time, trolling motor all the time. The way that I strap it down to the trailer, I'm not going to do it right now because I have some other stuff I need to do with the kayak when I'm done filming this video. But let me jump around this side here. So I have two cam straps, and there's an anchor here and on the other side of the boat, and an anchor down there by the brake light and on the other side of the boat. The cam straps just go over the kayak right behind the black pack and right here by the pedals. And I have 4 cheap seatbelt covers from Walmart. And I put the seatbelt covers right over the ratchet strap so it doesn't tear up the vinyl or the kayak or anything like that. And you just pull them down until they're snug and go on down the road. I've got a rope that attaches to the front handle when I slide it off of the kayak trailer. So really, when I get to the ramp, all I do is put my paddle, my net, my camera pole, my flag pole, and my fishing rods in the kayak, and I'm good to go. Super, super easy. And when I'm not fishing, this is just how it sits in the garage. Usually with the straps on there, just not snug down. And then when it's time to go fishing, I just snug down the the straps, hook up the trailer, and I'm off to the races. So what some of you might want to know, what do I think about the PWR129? And what do I think about the PWR129 versus my Hobie Pro Angler? There's good and bad to everything, right? So one of the things I struggled with on this kayak right out of the jump that's kind of now been resolved is the foot steering was very, very stiff. I don't like super loose steering for foot steering, but I don't want to fight with it. It was super tight, and my rudder didn't like to drop. Now, the rudder, I'm going to pop you off of this tripod. It'll just be a little easier for me. So the rudder still does not like to drop on its own. See how it took a little bit of slack there? But the rudder is still up. But if I just give her a little line, she comes on down. Now there is a spring in the rudder that you adjust up there at that cap, if you can see it. It's a spring, tension spring. Sorry, camera issue. It's a tension spring, and I've got it as tight as it'll go, and it still doesn't pull down on its own. I think that it will get better as it wears in. It's all still very new. But at least now, before I'd have to pull the cord and like take the paddle and tap on the kayak back there at the rope, or lean way over the seat and over the black pack and give it some slack, or it wouldn't go, or maybe wiggle the pedals. So at least now I can deploy it without getting out of my seat. But it definitely needs to loosen up a little bit. The foot steering is now smooth as butter. I took a little bit of, it's a dry lube made for RVs, for like track and window. And I sprayed it on either side of the pedal, on both sides, ran it up and down the rail. On this one, I used a little too much, and now I have a stain there. But that took care of the foot pedal issue. Switch back on here real quick. I've struggled with the net, like we already talked about. That's no fault of Bonafide or anything like that. It's just me getting used to a new kayak. What was the other thing I wanted to talk about? Rod storage. I loved the rod storage on the Pro Angler. A lot of people put block off plates on those and don't use it. I kept all 6 of my go-to fishing rods in my kayak at all times, traveling down the road. And then when I got to the lake, I would just take them out, put them in the black pack. So that's been a little bit of an adjustment, but it's not, given all the problems I had with the Pro Angler, it's just not a plus to the Pro Angler that accomplishes anything over getting me to choose that over the PWR. So the PWR is designed to be motorized, hence Power 129. It is so much more efficient under power in the water than my Pro Angler could ever have dreamt to be. Literally a mile an hour to a mile and an hour and a half faster with this setup, sometimes more than with the Pro Angler. That's nuts. And it's just the way that it was designed. Now, to that point, you might be wondering to yourself, how does the PWR 129 paddle? If something happens to your motor, how does it paddle? It paddles like a dream. For the size and everything of this kayak, the minimal amount of effort required to paddle it is impressive. Now, I will say I had an issue when my motor died out on the lake 2 days ago. The weather was atrocious, high wind. We had some whitecaps out on that lake, like not like ocean whitecaps, but for a small lake like that, that's basically a farm pond. We had some decent waves, and I was, picture it, I'm facing this way. Winds and waves are coming at me this way when the motor dies. So the waves are hitting me on the right side. I needed to get left. I needed to bring the bow of the kayak around this way. And even with my foot steering all the way to the left and paddling on just the right side or paddling backwards on the left side, I could not get that kayak to come around. Now, that's kind of just like a perfect scenario for that to happen. What I did is I just paddled straight and made slight corrections until I got a little further up where the wind was a little bit blocked by some trees. Once I was out of that like 15, 18 mile an hour wind, I was able to bring the nose around, and then I was able to paddle back to the ramp perfectly fine. Zero issues. It was just the perfect storm, no pun intended, of how the wind and waves were hitting the kayak versus trying to get it around. It's a big kayak. It just, it's not any fault of the kayak that I couldn't get it around at that moment. I could turn the bow to the right, so I could nose into the wind and let it push me backwards. It wasn't the end of the world. It felt a little sketchy for a minute there, but the PWR 129 has fantastic stability and fantastic secondary stability. What secondary stability is when the kayak's sitting level and you're standing or whatever and it's balanced. That's your primary stability. When things get sketchy and you start getting to that point where you feel like you're going to flip over, right when it hits the point of flipping over, it stops and becomes stable. That's secondary stability. The Pro Angler had secondary stability, but not great secondary stability, and that's how I ended up upside down. The PWR 129 has fantastic secondary stability, and that's very important. So it paddles exceptionally well. And the foot steering combined with the paddling is pretty sweet. I'm not going to lie. The foot steering is also great with the trolling motor. If you're working a section of docks, you can set your trolling motor to 2, 3, 4, whatever speed you want to go, and then use your feet to keep you steering the way that you want, right along those docks, right along that bank, right along that brush pile. Whatever it is that you want, you can keep yourself in place with your feet without the exertion. So like the Pro Angler, mine was the 360 model. So I could do the same thing with my feet in the Pro Angler because the drive turns, but I'm still doing all the physical labor of keeping myself there and constantly taking a hand off of the rod to change the drive. You can't just turn the drive with your feet. You can turn the drive with a handle. So you're still taking up one of your hands and you're still physically exerting that effort to do that. With the PWR 129, the trolling motor makes all the physical effort for you, and you don't have to take your hands off because your feet can steer where you're fishing. It's just really phenomenal. And once I get the hang of it and truly dial in the relationship between my feet steering and my trolling motor, that's going to be an absolutely deadly asset to have. So let me check my notes real quick. I don't think there's anything that I wanted to talk about that I forgot, but I made notes because, squirrel. I absolutely love the Bonafide PWR129. And you know what? You're going to love it too. There's just too many people that are so jacked up about this kayak for good reason. Gene Jensen, Fishing with Gramps, Bearded Paddler, uh, totally just spaced on the other person that I was going to mention, Lance Burris. There are just so many people using this kayak, guys that are like real hammers that are way better than I'll ever be, that absolutely love this kayak. And there's a reason for it. Hey, you know what? There is one more comparison I wanted to make between the PWR 129 and my Hobie Pro Angler 14 360. Can't believe I almost forgot. Price. Price. You're going to take home this kayak for under $2,000. The MSRP is like $1,800. The Hobie is over $5,000. Guys, $2,000 versus $5,000, and you're getting a better kayak. The quality is phenomenal. Hobie's quality has gone down the toilet since COVID. Multiple new owners, they don't care. Screw Hobie. They don't care about you anymore. The old Hobies, they're phenomenal. I used to drink that Hobie Kool-Aid like a girl in an X-rated video, just pour it all over my face. But guys, no more. I started choking on that Kool-Aid. You can buy multiple PWR 129s for what you can buy a Pro Angler 14 360 for. You can have a fleet versus one kayak. And every one of those kayaks is going to be better quality and better on the water. It's a no-brainer. Hobie can't even compete with this. Hobie would have to completely restructure their entire company and purpose and quality control and design, and like throw out the whole book and start over to get anywhere close to this. And it's going to take them years to do it. And Bonafide's making their stuff in the US still. You can't compare them. There is no comparison. It's the PWR 129 all day, every day. It dominates. This kayak is fantastic. You are not going to regret buying a Bonafide PWR 129. Now, if I had to guess, this video is probably running close to 45 minutes already, even after I edit it. I talk a lot, and I've been talking for a while. But I'm pretty confident that I covered everything. And like I said, in a later video, I will go into my wrap, show you how I did it, and how you can do it too. But yeah, if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section down below. Sorry guys, it's early. I wanted to get out here and do this before it got too terribly hot. I haven't even had my coffee yet. So if you have a comment or a question, leave it down below. I will do my best to respond to everyone. Hit that subscribe button and check out our channel page. I've got 4 years worth of great videos on there. I'm sure you'll find something that you enjoy. And I hope to see you again in future videos. So until then, tight lines.